Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Always Chasing After Something. This will be Part 9, Chapter 6. Shigaraki was lucky Kurogiri got him out of there when he did, because Shoda wanted murder. I'm leaving this in your hands. Fucking hell. All that work to convince the kid to stick around, the stress, the promises, the plans, gone up in smoke because one asshole couldn't leave his goddamn class alone for one fucking day. Shoda hadn't even blinked, and Izuku had been gone, Hisashi's arms now holding empty air. They couldn't go after the kids either, because Shigaraki needed to be detained. The villain disintegrated Shoda's capture weapon every time he tried to use it, but Hisashi circled around until they had Shigaraki penned in. With his bleeding stab wound, it should have been simple to corral him, but then Shigaraki pulled out his phone and called Kurogiri, and a warp gate appeared a minute later, and the villain was gone before they could capture him. A knife through the chest, pinning him to the floor, counted as captured, right? Maybe one through each hand. Uraraka rounded up the class for him, so he could at least make sure none of his students were in danger. She was the only one involved, for better or worse, and only had a few bloody spots on her neck to show for it. It was a shit show. There were police, and the mall was shut down and searched, and all Shoda wanted to do was go out there and find Izuku and Ary, and tell them they didn't need to run. He and Hisashi would always protect them, from everything. They could trust them. Aizawa-sensei, Uraraka called, bandages wrapped around her neck, and she fiddled with her fingers. Yes, Uraraka, he asked. They were by the front doors, waiting for permission to go home. The rest of the class had already gone, but as the heroes who had been involved, he and Hisashi were still needed. Uraraka had been giving her statement to Detective Tsukauchi, delayed by the search until now. Izuku and Shigaraki, they have a history together, don't they? She asked. He only wanted to talk to Izuku, but he had to hold me hostage too, so I wouldn't raise the alarm. He gave her his full attention. With the Shie Hisaikai mess, he'd almost forgotten Izuku had info on the Nomu, and the League's doctor, too. What did Shigaraki say exactly? He called him number 84, and his player too, and Izuku really freaked out at first. He went super pale and couldn't stop shaking. Then he got mad and pulled a knife and made some pretty graphic threats. Shoda had heard some of the kids' threats in the past. He didn't doubt it. Anything else? She shook her head. I think Shigaraki wanted him to come back with him, but Izuku didn't want to go. Is that why he and Ary are under your protection? To stay away from the League? It would become one, if he could find the kids again. Izuku and Ary's situation is complicated, and I'm not at liberty to discuss the details. She accepted his answer with a nod. He's okay, right? You know where he is? He sighed. No point in hiding it. I don't, actually. He's used to operating on his own. I'll do everything I can to find them again. She teared up. I'm sorry. It's my fault Shigaraki found him today. I'm the one who invited him here, even though he's in hiding. You had no idea Shigaraki would be here, or that the two had any kind of connection. I wasn't even aware of it, though I knew he had some connection to the League. Don't blame yourself for this. You did nothing wrong by trying to be his friend. If I can help find him in any way. What was he going to do with these kids? I appreciate that, but right now you should go home and get some rest. She'd given her statement and had been seen by the medics. That was all she could do right now. If the investigation needed more from her, they knew how to contact her. Okay, See you in a few days. Good night, Uraraka, he said, waving her off. He waited for Hisashi to finish giving his statement, trying not to explode with fury at what Uraraka had told him. Number 84. They'd called him by a damn number. And it sounded like Izuku had been so freaked out by Shigaraki he'd frozen. That wasn't like him at all. Izuku was the type of person to move on instinct. For him to be so terrified he couldn't do anything at first. What the hell had Shigaraki done to him? Well, I'm finally free, Hisashi said, strolling over with his hands in his pockets. One shopping bag dangled from his wrist, the only shopping they'd gotten done before the day had gone to hell in a handbasket. A bag of clothes for Ary that might never be worn now. Both of them were pretty sour at this turn of events. Then let's go home, before I actually murder someone, Shoda said. Hisashi raised a brow, and he repeated what Uraraka had told him, adding in his own rant about the cruelty and unfairness of it all. How many ways had the world fucked this one kid over? Had some cruel deity just looked down and pointed at Izuku one day and gone, "This one. Screw this kid in particular." His rationality had to be balanced with moments of complete irrationality, and Hisashi had learned to take these moments in stride over the years, letting Shoda get it out of his system. At least he'd been in their car, so no one else heard him. I know, he said, taking Shoda's hand in his. The League has a lot to answer for, and if we lost those kids today over it, I'm signing myself up to the task force and sneaking into every location they're looking into until I find the bastards and crush them with a sonic booyah. Sounds like a plan, Shoda agreed. I can't believe they ran, Hisashi said. Shoda sighed and leaned back against the seat. Izuku was freaking out. It was probably the only way he felt like he could get control of the situation back. We would have protected them. Nothing was going to happen to them, Hisashi said. I know, but a few good days with us doesn't undo years of trauma they have. Hisashi scowled. Go back to being irrational. It was more satisfying. You know logic is how I cope. Yeah, I know. Try calling him again. Why he thought Izuku would answer now when he hadn't the first half-dozen times Shoda called, he didn't know. But he humored the man anyway and called him. Straight to voicemail. Shoda left another message, begging Izuku to call him back. Neither man said another word for the rest of the drive. Hisashi parked the car, and they slowly climbed out and walked to the elevator. He missed having Izuku and Ary with them already. In the elevator, they leaned against each other, arms loosely wrapped around one another's waist, heads resting on each other's shoulders. They only half parted when the doors opened on their floor, walking down the hall attached at the hip. Shoda unlocked the door and let them into the quiet apartment. The quiet apartment that had the lights on. The lights he distinctly remembered turning off when they left. And smelled like fresh-cooked fish. You're back, Ary cried, poking her head out of the kitchen. Hisashi wheezed beside him, barely shutting the door. Ary, you're here. Did they really come here? How'd they get in? It wasn't often Shoda was speechless, but he could not for the life of him think of one thing to say right now. Izu's almost done dinner, Ary said. Shoda's feet moved on their own, crossing the living room to peer into the kitchen. Izuku stood at the stove, grilling fish, resolutely not looking up. His ears burned red, though, and his eyes teared up. Shoda couldn't believe it. The kid had been panicking and ran for his life, and he'd chosen to come here. This apartment was considered safe to him. Izuku said, finally glancing sideways at him. It'll be a few more minutes. Oh, kiddo, you didn't have to make dinner, Hizashi said, peering over Shoda's shoulder. We're just glad you're okay, and you're here. God, we were so worried we'd never see you again after you disappeared. Izuku's shoulders hitched up to his ears. I'm sorry, he whispered. I did everything wrong today. Shoda surged forward, stepping around Ary, and pulled the kid into a hug. No, you didn't. You got yourself out alive, and you came back home. Izuku was aboard against him. All we want is for you two to be safe and happy. I wish you'd called me earlier or stayed nearby, but you did nothing wrong. That was the crack that finally broke the dam, and Izuku buried his face in Shoda's shoulder to cry, chest heaving as he silently sobbed. Hizashi came forward to rub Izuku's back with one hand, the other one gently taking the spatula to save their dinner. Ary hugged Izuku's legs. It's all right. Let it out, Shoda said. The kid was so self-sufficient most of the time. He paid rent and bills, took care of Ary, made his own meals, and acted like a complete grown man, that it was easy to forget Izuku was still a kid, and he shouldn't know how to do any of that. Despite his intelligence and skills, Izuku still needed support, too. He'd need to make sure Izuku knew that it was okay to ask for support. He would have stayed there all night if that was what Izuku wanted, but he regained his composure in a few minutes and peeled himself away from Shoda and Hizashi, quietly saying he'd set the table, and stepping over to the cabinet they kept the plates in. Izuku, Shoda started, but he didn't know how to finish, and it hung in the air. Izuku didn't look at them as he sidestepped them all to bring the plates out to the dining room. Ary tugged on Hizashi's sleeve. Hizashi squatted down to her level and hugged her, too. I think Izu remembered something bad today, she confessed. He looks really sad all the time. Hizashi hefted her onto his hip and stood up again. Yeah, we think he did, too, Hizashi said. He checked on their dinner again and turned the burner off. Do you know what makes him feel better? She shook her head. I'm usually the sad one. And what does he do for you when you feel sad? Hizashi asked. Shoda glanced into the dining room to see the plates in front of each chair, and Izuku standing with his back to them, rubbing at his face. He holds me and tells me stories and gives me yummy food, Ary said. There was a good chance Izuku's methods of comforting her would also comfort him. Food they could handle. Dinner was already made, but they could do something special for dessert. There was ice cream in the freezer, but they also had cake mixes around here somewhere, and they were simple enough to whip up. Go start eating. I'm going to do something real fast, he said, already preheating the oven. Hizashi cocked his head. Okay. Shoda found the cake mix in the high cabinets over the oven. Success. He displayed the box to Hizashi and shrugged. Hizashi grinned and nodded, pecking him on the cheek, and sat Ary down so he could bring out the fish. Who's hungry? Hizashi announced, stepping into the dining room. Thanks for cooking, kiddo. Izuku's reply was muttered, and Shoda couldn't make it out from the kitchen, but that was fine. This wouldn't take him long. Hizashi carried the dinner conversation, talking about the times Shoda had brought home stray cats. They'd kept all of them except one, and they'd only given Dragon up because he was a mean old thing that kept clawing their faces when they slept. Cake in the oven, he tore through the cupboards to look for icing. They didn't have any, so he grabbed a bag of chocolate chips and decided he'd just melt it in the microwave later. It would be enough for a short notice thing. Izuku and Ary were both pushing the food around on their plates, so Shoda hadn't missed much by the time he joined them. This one cat he brought home, Ginger, filthiest cat you've ever seen. It took 4 baths to finally see her beautiful orange fur, Izashi said. What about the time that you climbed a tree to save one? Shoda prompted, shoveling a spoonful of rice into his mouth. Oh man, how could I forget? Izashi said and launched into the story. Shoda watched the kids while he listened. Ary was enthralled with each tale, hanging off of Izashi's every word. Izuku was listening, but his energy level was definitely lower than normal. He looked like he'd fall asleep in his plate any second. That was all right. They could have a quiet night in, maybe put on another movie. All of them could do with the downtime, honestly. He was still coming down from the adrenaline rush of the day, dealing with Shigaraki and losing Izuku and Ary, only to find them here of all places. He still couldn't believe they'd come here. It might only be because Izuku's apartment was compromised, but he wouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. When they finished eating, he volunteered to clean up. Why don't you get another movie going? Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, Izashi said. We can watch Kiki's Delivery Service, and maybe we'll make a fort tonight. How does that sound? A fort? Ary repeated. Yeah, Izashi said. We'll take the blankets and couch cushions and make a little tent to watch the movies from. Her face pinched in confusion, still not understanding the concept or the appeal, but was willing to go along with it. Izuku's promise she would like it sealed the deal, and the 3 of them moved into the living room to get started. Shoda took all the dishes to the kitchen. The cake still had a few minutes, so he got started loading up the dishwasher and hand-washing the pan. By the time the cake was out of the oven, he'd already cleaned everything up and wiped down the table. It needed a while to cool before he could add any icing, so he helped out with some of the fort supports and obligingly fetched extra blankets from the rest of the apartment. Hizashi spared no effort with the fort, tossing almost every pillow they owned inside for them to sit on, and using the dining chairs to support the sides. It was still a tight fit, but that might have been part of the point. It wouldn't be weird for them to offer comfort when they were only a few inches away. He quickly made up the icing for the cake and cut slices for everyone. The cake hadn't cooled yet, so the icing was pretty sloppy, but Ary's eyes lit up with excitement anyway. And some of the depression in Izuku's eyes lightened just a little, which made the whole thing worth it. They piled inside to start the movie, Hizashi and Ary in the middle, while Izuku sat on the outside, beside Ary, and Shoda sat beside Hizashi. Both Hizashi and Ary fell asleep before the end of the movie. Izuku probably could have, but didn't feel comfortable doing so in front of them. He hated to wake either person up, but after the chocolate cake, Ary really needed to brush her teeth before bed, and he wasn't carrying Hizashi to bed. The man was too tall and gangly. The fort came down much less gracefully than it had gone up, and he and Izuku corralled sleepy Hizashi and Ary to bed. Shoda made sure to catch Izuku before he shut the door to the guest room for the night. If you need anything in the night, someone to talk to, or just someone to sit with you, come wake me up. I'll be all right, he said. I know you will, Shoda said. The offer is still there. You don't have to go through this alone. Not that he entirely knew what this was, but he didn't have to know to give the kids some much-needed support. It burned, not knowing. He wanted to discuss and dissect every moment of the kids' day, but Izuku looked far too fragile for that tonight. It could wait. He didn't need an interrogation right now. Thanks, Izuku said. Night. Night, kid. Izuku shut the door. Shoda took a deep breath and crawled into his own bed, seeking out his husband. No one said taking care of kids was easy, but no one said it could hurt this much either. All right, listeners, this concludes the first half to Chapter 6 of Always Chasing After Something. The second half to this one will be up next, which will continue with where we left off. I hope you're enjoying this one so far. Leave those thoughts, comments, reactions below. This chapter is one I really like because there's a lot of fluff elements that take place throughout it, a lot of trauma stuff coming up too. Aizawa and them starting to get some more information about Izuku's past. Not just us, but also them starting to uncover these things. And Izuku's confrontation with Shigaraki, the fact that they come back to the apartment and the kids are there. So there's just so much that the author does a great job with in this. So please let me know what you're thinking in the comments below. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.